Hey everybody, what's going on? It's me, Kenan Jerome Floyd, with another episode of Dangerously Awkward. Thank you for joining me for this very special episode. I never thought I would be saying this, but what does Dylan Roof, James Jackson, and Liam Neeson have in common? They're willing to kill black people to protect white women. Sit back and relax for this episode of Dangerously Awkward.
This is true. I'm not going to use any names, but I was away and I came back and she told me she had been raped, but she handled the situation of the rape in the most extraordinary way. But my immediate reaction was, I asked, did she know who it was? No. What colour were they? She said it was a black person. I went up and down areas with a cosh, hoping I'd be approached by somebody. I'm ashamed to say that. And I did it for maybe a week, hoping some black bastard would come out of a pub and have a go at me about something, so that I could kill him. And it took me a week, maybe a week and a half to kind of go for that. And she said to me, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm just going out for a walk, She said, "What's wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong, fine." And it was horrible when I think back, but I did that. And I've never admitted that to it. I'm saying it to a journalist. God forbid.
Holy shit.
It's awful. But I did learn a lesson from it when I eventually thought, what the fuck are you doing, And I come from a society, I grew up in Northern Ireland in the Troubles, and I knew a couple of guys that died on hunger strike, and I had acquaintances that were very caught up in the Troubles. And I understand that need for revenge, but it just leads to more revenge and more killing and more killing. And, Ireland, Northern Ireland's proof of that, All the stuff that's happening in the world at the minute, the violence is proof of that, So it's, but that's, primal need.
Hey everybody, welcome to this edition of Dangerously Awkward. I'm your host, Kenan Jerome Floyd. Thank you so much for joining me for this special episode. If you haven't already, go ahead and like and subscribe my YouTube channel, KJF Network, and also follow me on Instagram at Dangerously Awkward. All right, so as you saw from that opening interview, Liam Neeson has got himself in some hot water. Basically, what he was describing was a friend of his, a woman that claimed that she had been raped by a black person, and Liam Neeson, within his head, thought that would be appropriate to walk up and down the streets of Northern Ireland with a weapon to try to either, well, he doesn't even say he's even looking for the perpetrator. He's basically saying he just wants to kill any random black person that bothered him in retaliation for his friend's alleged rape. But it's very interesting. It's very interesting, the conversation that this piece of news is starting to open up now. First of all, I didn't know what a kosh was. I had to look it up, and apparently a kosh is a big stick or a club. So he was going to beat someone to death. He was walking up and down the streets of Northern Ireland like a caveman, looking to beat someone up with a big stick. And I had some questions about this story. First of all, I wanted to know how many black people were actually in Northern Ireland, and I'm sure some of you are actually wondering the same thing. So I went to Wikipedia, and in Northern Ireland specifically, there is from a 2001 census. Now, I don't know what year it was that Liam Neeson had this encounter with his friend. But as of 2001 in Northern Ireland, there was 1,136 black people versus the population of 1,685,267. So we're looking at 1.43 percentile of black people in Northern Ireland. You got to do some digging to find a black person in Northern Ireland. That's pretty much what it was. That's why he was able to walk up and down the streets and wasn't able to find a victim to get into a scuffle with. We saw that the main reason that he didn't go through with this plan is basically he walked it off. He walked it off. He did a lot of power walking. He did a lot of thinking, and he talked himself out of killing a random black person. My thoughts on it is I don't think Liam Neeson deserves to lose his career over it. There's a lot of people that feel that he should, be digitally removed from the new Men in Black movie. I'm still going to go see the Men in Black movie. They feel that he needs to be canceled and all that type of stuff. I don't believe that. It's nice that he was able to be honest about his feelings that we once had, because this type of news and this type of conversation opens up a whole nother conversation that I think we need to be able to have. Now, him asking who the person was interesting, and then him going a step further and asking what color he was. That's a subconscious thing. It's not necessarily it doesn't necessarily say that he's racist per se, but it does contribute to the idea that society that we live in has racial undertones. And I think that's a very important aspect that we look at and explore. Now, as far as him telling the story and saying that he was looking for a black bastard, that's all we all talk like that. Black folks, we say, I need to get my black ass out of here or whatever, right? Or people that are talking about they tell stories. I was in the store and this Puerto Rican guy walked in, or this Indian guy was behind the counter. Those are all details that don't contribute anything to a story. It doesn't make a difference of what race the person was. But we do it as a force of habit. There's really no reason to do that, unless you're telling a story about a calculus test and you say the person that took the test was Asian, or you got into a car accident and the woman was Asian. You should say stuff like that because it's hilarious. But other than that, there's really no reason to keep those details in stories like this. But I think if we want to have another conversation about this, we can look at Liam Neeson's viewpoints through a historical context. For years, for centuries even, this universal appeal to protect specifically white women from other communities through the use of violence has been rampant through many different cultures. If we look at this particular case with Liam Neeson, took place in Ireland. But I'm going to focus on the historical context that it's had here in America. Now, there's been a few. The question that we need to present, I believe, is from a person like Liam Neeson's point of view. How many black lives is worth one white woman's honor? Now, he might not have looked at it that way. And certainly if something like that happened to any friends of mine, my sister, or any of my cousins, I would probably have the same thought process. Exacting revenge, trying to see what happens, trying to get justice for anyone that's dear to me. So from that perspective, I don't necessarily look at it from a racial perspective. But if we want to look at it as a connotation of Liam Neeson was willing to kill any black man to defend his friend's honor, we have to see how much, from that point of view, how many black lives are worth one white woman's honor. Now let's look at that historically. For example, we have the example of Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street took place in the year 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was a result of the Tulsa riots. Now, what happened was there was this 17-year-old elevator operator who happened to be a white woman. She worked in the building along with a 19-year-old black man named Dick Rowland. He was actually a shoe shiner. And the only bathroom in the building was on the top floor, so he had to use the elevator and go up to the top floor to be able to use the blacks only elevator. So supposedly what happened was when he left the elevator, store clerk saw him stumble out the elevator and he heard Sarah scream. So the store clerk assumed that he had assaulted this young woman or he had raped this young woman in the elevator. So what ended up happening was he called the authorities. Dick Rowland was arrested, and he got the support of the black community in the area, which was behind the successful Black Wall Street. So they went down to the police station. They tried to ask what happened. They gave him this runaround story. They said, "No, we're not going to let you lynch this young man. We need due process. We need to figure out what's going on." And initially, them standing up for this young man sparked a riot from the white people in this town and this black community. So what ended up happening? Well, we had the riots. We had Black Wall Street being burnt to the ground because somehow these hillbillies got a hold of airplanes and they dropped incendiary bombs on Black Wall Street and burnt the place to the ground, which is the first instance of bombs being dropped on U.S. soil in history, right? So the cops got involved. The United States National Guard got involved. It resulted in 36 dead black people, over millions of dollars of property loss, and 10,000 black people being homeless. It not only killed black people, but also killed black economy. So again, the question in this case became, how many black lives mattered? How many black lives was Sarah Page's honor worth, right? Now, in this case, she chose not to testify in a case. So Dick Rowland ended up being acquitted. At the end of the day, he was acquitted. He lived the rest of his days as a free man, right? But that doesn't take away from this is what happened based on an accusation. Like, they didn't even know if it was true. It was a rumor that was spread around. It got into the newspaper, and that's the way that the media sparked this race war. And they didn't even have all the facts. So in this case, we're saying 10,000 lives was worth this one white woman's honor. Another case, 1955, the story of Emmett Till. Carolyn Bryant Dunham. If you don't know the story, initially Emmett Till, a 14-year-old black child, was visiting I believe it was Mississippi, and he was visiting family. And the story was originally that he whistled at Carolyn. She went home and told her husband, Roy Bryant, and he got his half-witted half-brother, J.W. Milan, I don't know. And they went to Emmett's great uncle's house, and he dragged him out the house and murdered him. A few years ago, we found out that Carolyn actually lied. She lied about the encounter. She said that he grabbed her around the waist, and he said he had sex with white women, and he pulled her close and was saying obscenities to her. That was the story that she testified with in court. However, a few years ago, she recanted all of that information. That's the reason why the FBI reopened the case. So this is how easy it is for people to kind of like pass off the power that a false accusation in this historical context can have. First of all, her daughter-in-law, Marsha Bryant, she said, people unfortunately believe that Carolyn Bryant Dunham played a role in Till's death. So the fact that her husband and brother-in-law killed him, she had nothing to do with that. She didn't have anything to do with that. You know, she just told her husband, oh, this little black boy came and he grabbed me by my waist and said he wanted to fuck me and all this stuff. I don't know what you want to do with that information, but I'm going to go make dinner. Then they leave and kill the boy. So now it's, oh, she had nothing to do with his death. She was actually sad that he was killed, according to her. So as far as she's concerned in this whole situation, she's innocent, right? How do you take? You could take that for what you want, but it still goes to show that even though she didn't pull the trigger, her honor was more important than this boy's life, right? So I know some of you are saying, well, wait, that happened years ago. That happened years ago. What does that have to do with what's going on today? Well, let's talk about today. 2015. Dylan Roof goes into an Episcopal church and he kills 9 African Americans because he felt that blacks were taking over the world and they were dating white women. So there, how many black lives are worth one white woman's honor? 9. 2017, James Jackson killed Timothy Common, a homeless black man in Manhattan, with a sword after he scoured the streets for 3 days looking for a victim. He said specifically before coming to New York that he was looking for a successful black man with blondes, younger guys that put white girls on the wrong path. So, how many lives was worth one white woman's honor? In this case, 1. And there's many other cases, but there's 4. But those are the 4 cases that I want to go over to kind of illustrate the sentiment that some people feel when you hear Liam Neeson's testimony. Now, should he lose his career? No, I don't think so. But it's nice to finally see somebody honest about this feeling, this unspoken mantra that the world has about the protection of white women specifically. And the question is, who's responsible for this? Who's really responsible for this kind of toxicity that exists in the world? Well, I mean, that might be a tough question to answer. I can only talk about personal experience. I'll tell you one personal experience that kind of that for me, this is my stake in this whole argument. One time I was doing a show. I was doing a show in Pennsylvania. And I was living at New York City at the time, and I was featuring for a young comedian. She happened to be a young white woman, right? A young blonde white woman. So I picked her up, and we drove from New York to the show in Pennsylvania, right? So the entire time we're going there, we're just having fun, we're talking and all that stuff. But there was like certain things that she said while we were driving that kind of like set off some red flags for me. About 30 minutes into the trip, she said something about me having a big black dick. That's not necessarily a lie, but I mean, it kind of came out of nowhere. You know what I mean? About 45 minutes into the trip, we were having this conversation about the entertainment industry, and she said that white women, specifically white women, have it tougher in America than black men. Another red flag that went off, right? So we get to the venue, we do our show and everything, and we go home, right? We're on our way home. We're in New Jersey. I got to stop for some gas. So we drive down this dark road. There's 2 gas stations, one to the right, one to the left, but it's a little bit behind us. I see the one behind us is cheaper. So instead of turning into the gas station to the right, I do a U-turn and turn into the gas station on the left, right? I'm immediately pulled over by New Jersey police officers, right? So I pull under I don't realize this until I'm pulling up to the gas pump. And they're shining their lights all in the car, and two police officers get out. One gets out on this side, the driver's side, and then the other one gets out on the passenger side. So he looks into the car. He's like, where you guys head? Oh, we're heading back to New York. We just got done from a show. We're comedians. And I I'm just getting gas. And he's like, well, you made an illegal U-turn back there and all that stuff. This woman looks at the officer and says, hey, I have to pee. Can I get out? So she gets out the car. She leaves me by myself with these two police officers. She gets out the car, goes into the gas station, and I'm sitting there. The car officer takes my license and all that stuff, and obviously he sees that I don't have like any record or anything like that. So by the time he comes back to the car, she comes back to the car with snacks, and she says, oh, you didn't get shot. Good. I have some snacks. And the officer laughs and stuff, and he's like, well, you know what? Don't listen to her and all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. A few feet away from me, there's a bus filled with black people, and they actually go, and for somehow she knew that they were visiting a prison that was nearby. So she's like, oh, those are the people that visit the prison. So before the officer leaves, she says, thank you, officer, for giving us just a warning. And as a matter of fact, I want to let you know that I don't feel safe around here. I'm sure glad you're here to protect me. This woman is riding in my car. And she's not scared enough. Like, she's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not a scary guy, but it's like, yo, have some fucking respect. Right? So, like, in her head, like, she already had in her head that I can get away with anything I want. I can do whatever. I can say whatever. Fuck this guy that took me from New York and took me to Pennsylvania. Now he's going to take me back to my Fifth Avenue apartment. Fuck this guy. And then on the way home, she talked the whole time about how handsome the cop was. So, from that perspective, and then we talk about Liam Neeson, I learned from there is my life is not for sale. If it was between me and her, it goddamn better be her. That's just my thing. That's just my thing. Now, again, this is one instance. Now, this isn't all white women. This was just one white woman that I'm talking about here. That I'm not generalizing. I'm just saying this is just one. I'm not talking about all white people either. These four cases were four cases. These were four people or four instances. It's not everybody. So don't look at me and trying to say that I'm racist and I don't like white people. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying let's look at it through this perspective. There's a lot of black people out there that know the power that white women have, and it makes us scared because it's not necessarily the white woman herself. It's the retaliation of society that will come down on us like a hammer. Now, granted, there are serious cases of rape and sexual assault and all that stuff, and those people need to be tried, and justice needs to be served. But I'm just talking about generally speaking the historical context. So again, if we look at it with the movements and all that stuff that are going on now, that's why it's sometimes hard to find support from the black community for certain movements. For example, if it's a movement that's led by white women, for example, there might be some that are a little wary to follow because we might say, well, historically speaking, where were you when my ancestors were getting lynched? Oh, you were complacent. And again, it's not necessarily talking about that woman in particular. It's talking about, historically speaking, the role that white women has played in white supremacy. And again, it's not everybody, but if we're going to say, well, it's not all of us, then it has to be that way across the board. Like if there's one good white woman, she can't represent all the problematic white women that are out there. If it's one good white man, he can't represent all the mass shooters that are out there. If it's one good white person, that person doesn't represent the KKK. If it's one good black person, that black person doesn't represent the thugs. If it's one man, he doesn't represent all the toxic men, toxic masculinity that's out there. If it's one Muslim, that person doesn't represent all terrorists. So we have to do that across the board. We can look at it on an individual level and say, okay, well, this is certain cases, and these are these people. But if we're gonna have the conversation about, well, men need to check other men for toxic masculinity. If black people need to check other black people for whatever reason, if Muslims need to check other Muslims for extremities, if white people need to check other white people for this, then we have to sit down and say, we need to talk about the use of the damsel in distress syndrome. That's what I'm going to call it. The damsel in distress syndrome that has caused the pain and destruction of others below that person. We need to talk about that. So again, not saying it's everybody. Not saying I don't like particular races of people or anything like that. But if we're going to have this conversation where I'm responsible, I need to be responsible for spreading positivity and have a form of reform and change in my community as far as being black and being a male. We also need to have a conversation of white women using their privilege throughout history to oppress others. Thank you for listening in on this episode of Dangerously Awkward. Again, subscribe to my YouTube channel, KJF Network. Subscribe and follow me on Instagram, Dangerously Awkward. I will catch you next time.